Hi there. The script for House of the Dragon's first episode was just publicly released online, and it has a couple of extra lines that were trimmed from the final version of the scene in which Viserys reveals Aegon's prophecy to Rhaenyra about the return of the White Walkers and the new Long Night. And it does directly address our question of, do they know specifically that this is about the White Walkers returning or not? Now, I'm making this as a whole series of videos. I'm splitting this off because it's the most important one. And remember, Martin said this is book spoilers, that he told them, yes, the reason the novel series is called A Song of Ice and Fire is that refers to Aegon the Conqueror's dream that made him forge the Iron Throne and unite the Seven Kingdoms. So I'm going to present the whole scene here, and I'm going to start with the dialogue that was in the finished version, and then I'll point out and I'll italicize the lines that were deleted. Happens in two batches. First, as in the aired episode, Viserys explains, the histories tell us that Aegon looked across the Blackwater from Dragonstone and saw rich land ripe for the capture, but ambition alone is not what drove him to conquest, it was a dream. Then there's some deleted lines giving backstory about Daenys the Dreamer, who he does mention in the final version, but the deleted lines are, since the days of old Valyria, a precious few in the Targaryen line have been gifted with prophetic dreams, like the one which saved our house from the doom. And just as Daenys foresaw the end of Valyria, now this is in the finished version, and just as Daenys foresaw the end of Valyria, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men. Now, I'm going to make a separate video about this because it's longer. There is a longer, full deleted scene that we knew existed, and we knew they filmed it because we've seen photos of it, of Viserys and Daemon in the throne room discussing the prophecies of Daenys the Dreamer, and it's exposition to the audience about the doom of Valyria and how the Targaryens survived it due to a prophecy. I'm going to cover that separately, but there was this subplot about who Daenys the Dreamer was, and they realized this is too much exposition for a general audience coming back to the series. I'd hoped they'd explain it in a later episode more, but they do name-drop Daenys, and another point in episode 4, they name-drop her father, Aenar, so it would have had just a little more explanation in it of who Daenys was. Thankfully, I've seen even, reaction videos by casual channels that didn't read the books, but who have seen the histories and lores. And Daenys the Dreamer is explained in part 1 of that 40-minute animated video they made about the conquest in Season 7. So I think when this episode came out, even after they trimmed that, enough people by this point, after a decade of filtering, even if you didn't read the books, it filtered through to you from theory channels what was the doom of Valyria and who was Daenys the Dreamer, that enough people caught up on what it was. But okay, that ties in. There was another deleted scene setting up mention of who Daenys the Dreamer was, but a little more specifically, just as Daenys foresaw the end of Valyria, Aegon foresaw the end of the world of men. Now we get to the meat of this deleted line. That's all just, it's tying into something else. Script note, shock overtakes Rhaenyra's features. Aegon was a dreamer, capital D. Then, this is dialogue from the final episode. It is to begin with a terrible winter gusting out of the distant north. Aegon saw absolute darkness riding on those winds, and whatever dwells within will destroy the world of the living. Then there's a script note. Rhaenyra gapes at her father as he unburdens himself of the secret that he has carried for so long. But here is where we get to the core of it, where they actually directly address our question. This is the real point of this whole video. Deleted lines here. After he says he saw absolute darkness in that winter, there's a line by Rhaenyra who asks, what is it? What is the darkness that he saw? What is it? What is the darkness? And Viserys responds, if Aegon knew, he never said. But he saw that there would be a light brilliant enough to stand against it, the fire of dragons. And then he continues as he does in the final version, when the great winter comes, Westeros needs to be united as one. He called his dream the Song of Ice and Fire, and I've passed this down from king to heir since Aegon's time. What can we gain from this? Well, you gotta step back and use the Doyleist instead of Watson standpoint on this for a bit. Martin admitted that in the books, Aegon the Conqueror had this prophetic dream. They kind of came up with the idea that maybe it was passed down to the early kings, but became lost knowledge during the Dance of the Dragons, that the chain was interrupted and Rhaenyra wasn't able to tell her younger sons. That's an idea Condell came up with, though Martin really likes it, because it could have happened. That, the knowledge was lost. What, would Aegon take something this big to his grave? So it grew organically, and Condell, well, could he have passed it down? That's a pretty good way to link the thing. So, invention, not invention, they were on the fence on this, that the way they phrase it, without giving a yes or no, that maybe Aegon knew, but if he did, he didn't pass that knowledge down. That they are actively planning a Targaryen conquest prequel. We heard about that last month. That they're leaving the door open that when we see Aegon the Conqueror in live action or in the later books, he could have very specifically had a prophetic dream about the White Walkers. But in the TV universe, they've established that Viserys and now Rhaenyra do not specifically link this with the stories of the White Walkers. Just, it's this terrible winter bringing apocalyptic darkness and cold, and demons within, is apparently what they were going for in the script. That Rhaenyra does not specifically know about the White Walkers. And the thing I keep asking, I've made videos about this as soon as it came out back during the premiere, like, how could this have affected the early kings? That, why did Jaehaerys make land grants to the Night's Watch and the first royal highway was to the Wall, not to Old Town, from King's Landing? That he was trying to prepare them for a war off to the north. People in Westeros know the legend of why the Wall was built. Many think it's fantasy, many don't believe it, but everyone knows the legend that the Wall and the Night's Watch exist to guard against the return of the White Walkers. I mean, in the books, it's actually common parlance that it's a curse to say that in the books, the White Walkers are called the Others, more commonly, with a capital O. The Others. So, like, Robert Baratheon will curse, this stupid feast. The Others take this feast, it's so stupid. The Others take your complaints. So imagine cursing like, the Others take your stupid royal petitions and stuff. That, like, people know that legend of why the Wall exists. They think it's made up at this point. They don't believe it anymore, but they've heard of it. So I think this is something that'll come up in Season 2, that would they put 2 and 2 together that the prophecy is about the White Walkers? Because Jace is going north to meet the Starks, and as Rhaenyra's heir, I mean, it skips around. We don't simply see 2 scenes and then he leaves. I think Season 2 will retroactively show she pulled him aside before he left and explained to him, now that you are my heir, here's the prophecy that was handed down to me. And that apparently that Jace would then discuss this with the Starks who are guarding the Wall because they border it. That'll be a big thing that comes up. That in the novels, in Fire and Blood, they call the alliance that Jace makes with Cregan Stark the Pact of Ice and Fire. And the Starks are one of the few groups that would take a prophecy about the White Walkers seriously. So that's a big question we have. That did they put 2 and 2 together that this must be about the White Walkers? A possibility comes up that just because this was in the script, they may have cut it for a reason. That it might not be canon anymore. That maybe maybe they thought this made Rhaenyra look stupid for never putting 2 and 2 together. That, well, of course it's about the White Walkers. That in Season 2, they might present that Rhaenyra always did assume it was about the White Walkers because she's not a fool. But that remains to be seen. That at least as scripted, originally they had Viserys saying, I don't know the specific nature of this threat, and not linking it with the White Walkers when he told Rhaenyra. They may have taken that out because they thought that made her look foolish. They might play with this in Season 2. It raises more questions than answers. I'm sorry this isn't a giant bombshell. But it at least touches on a question we had of, this is a major lore thing you're revealing. How much do they know exactly? And their answer was kind of maybe, but we'll see what happens. But I'm more interested in a lot of other things that were in the script, like the longer scene that they think they cut for time and flow of Daemon talking with Viserys about Old Valyria. They didn't say anything new in it that we didn't already know. Just pondering, do the gods have a purpose for us? Otherwise, why did they save us from the doom with prophecies and stuff? And oh, the gods don't care. They're doing their own thing. And that's kind of why Viserys realizes Daemon doesn't really believe in prophecies. Maybe I shouldn't tell him. But I'm going to split that off into its own video. I'm just going to read it off straight because it's still interesting. I mean, I think it's canon. It was cut for time. And then I'm going to do a longer video where I go through the whole script. I've already done this. I made a checklist of 20 things that are little things that are slightly different. Like, they would have mentioned Boros Baratheon in dialogue during the tournament just to set him up. Or scenes that were reordered. Little things that are still interesting of just how did you put this episode together. But in terms of lore stuff, that was one of the biggest ones. That there were a couple of lines they deleted from that where they asked, well, specifically, what is the threat? That's pretty interesting.